Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Piqued, a meetup for electronic music makers. I'm your oscillator, Corey Luna. On LFO is Rich Hogben, and our featured artists tonight are Shipwreck Detective and Anton Riehl. Each artist will perform back to back, followed by a group interview. Please follow along on YouTube and Twitch, where you can ask the artist questions, and I'll make sure to ask those questions for you. And it is February 16th, 2022, and it's been a rather hot winter in San Francisco. It's kind of weird, but
No
it's
kidding.
right. But I'm not opposed to getting a sunburn in winter. It's kind of weird, but I'll live with it. It's okay. So, Deb, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Thank you for
Cool.
asking.
Yeah. You feeling good? You got your synths warmed up tonight?
I do think I got them ready for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy what I have to share.
Excellent. Well, I don't have too many announcements ahead of time, so if you're ready, I think we're ready to have a listen to your set tonight.
Sure.
All right, Rich, go right ahead and let's go into Shipwreck Detective.
Thank you.
Shipwreck detective, everybody. Wow. Dev, thank you so much for starting us out on that wonderful journey. That was so delicate and really, really something, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
really great.
Yeah, we're all really happy to hear you. Happy to have you. We've got some questions coming up for you. I won't hit you up with them right now, but later on in the after Anton set, we'll get into some questions about your set, man. And it's
Sure.
really gorgeous. I can't wait to hear more about your setup tonight. And it was just wonderful. I think a lot of us were feeling some Blade Runner going on in there.
Thank you. Thank you. High praise. High praise.
It's cool, man. Really, really enjoyed it. All right. And so before I gush over this, let's get into Anton Riehl. Anton, are you ready to play? I think he might be ready. Yep. Okay. Rich, please queue up, and everyone get ready for Anton Riehl.
Wow.
My goodness. Yowza, yowza, yowza.
That got into like some Too Dark Park Skinny Puppy territory. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely felt some Too Dark Park in there.
I don't know them specifically, but definitely Skinny Puppy is is a big fan, or I'm a big fan, I'd say.
As am I. I like
Excellent.
Skinny Puppy a lot. I think Cleanse, Fold, Manipulate, and Bites are some of my favorites. When it comes to that, definitely got some Skinny Puppy vibes off of your set, Anton. That was really good.
Thank you so much.
Resume. You
Thank
went
you.
with
For sure.
you went with this arc because we felt you start out smooth, and then you went with this wonderful chaotic arch that brought us up here with like some crazy bukla, and then like kind of continued on with that style, and went to some other places. Oh, thank you so much. This is a treat to have you both on tonight. I'm really happy to have you both on, and as we get into our second session of the show where we get to talk to each other, I'm curious to know, starting off, I'd like to learn a bit more about your sets tonight and how you prepared for your sets. So
Sure.
Dev, let's start off with your set tonight. Please
Sure.
tell us about how you set up and what you're using tonight.
So I guess I can start with kind of like what I'm using as the main texture generators. Uh, a lot of the sound is being produced on three main things. Uh, First, right here is very trusty Moog Subsequent 37 and the Arturia Polybrute. Both are very, very substantial synthesizers, especially the Polybrute. I really lean on that a lot for texture. But kind of behind me, I don't know if you can see it back there, is the Electron Analog 4, which really came through for me on this one. It's four voices, and I kind of wanted to put it to the test and see if I could use it kind of like a 4-track tape machine. Like, very similar to the 4-track, like pulling in and pulling out drones. And it's not a massively polyphonic synthesizer, but I was curious and wanted to kind of challenge myself to make 4 tracks on each pattern of at least what I was hoping to be kind of like a creative monophonic drone, and then build some chords out of that. um, get kind of creative with the LFOs and modulation to add some movement to the texture. um, but those are the three main sound generators. And even further behind me, sorry about that, but I'm using Auto Machines, a couple devices from Auto Machines, the BIM delay and the BAM reverb. the Subsequent 37 is running through both of those, and those both have a really amazing like input gain capability, so you can drive the sound of them, and it usually comes up with a really nice kind of crunchy texture to it. And then so both the Polybrute and the Sub are going into the Octatrack, Electron Octatrack, with the Sub 37 going through the Auto Machines effects. And the Octatrack is kind of like working as a mixer for these two, and then it goes out into the Analog 4 because Analog 4 has an external input. So I kind of submixed it so they go into the Analog 4, and then that finally, well, not second to finally, the whole mix is getting warped by the Von Gone Ultra Shear, which has a really, really lovely stereo plate reverb and stereo vibrato, which I have in a random mode. And it kind of has this really lovely, uncontrollable warp to it. And it's kind of hard to find vibrato pedals that are stereo that do something like that. And it's also just a gorgeously built pedal. And then all of that is being processed by the Electron Analog heat, which is adding all that saturation to it.
I was curious about that because I noticed just from the picture that you sent me earlier this week that I saw, something from Electron in the background. I wasn't sure if it was the analog heat or not. And after hearing your set, I was more curious if that was your set or not.
Yeah, I love the analog heat. It's honestly like a secret weapon to kind of just really giving a nice warm fuzzy blanket to the entire mix. And I love how it transforms pretty much everything you run through it.
What are some of your favorite settings for analog heat?
So for the heat, the two settings that I use the most are the saturation and enhancement settings. For this entire set tonight, I used the saturation setting, and I kind of just kept the main gain of it at about, I want to say, like 1 or 2 o'clock. So it's not too oversaturated until I'm starting to bring pretty much every single instrument running through it, and then you start to get some really nice breakup. And the enhancement mode is also really nice because I guess it's if I want things to just be a little bit fuzzier and a little bit more meaty, it can depend on just kind of how I'm feeling that time. Sometimes I'll just change between the two of them.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Thank you, Deb. And let's jump over to Anton. And Anton, please tell us about your set tonight, what you're using, how you prepared.
Yeah. So obviously I'm using a lot of modular and a lot of different gear. So my initial plan was to kind of do something that moved between 3 different phases, sort of increasing in intensity. And also my goal was to try and get out of this limitation that happens a lot with modular, where one setup kind of limits you to one space. So I was trying my best to use multiple instruments in multiple ways. So but I guess some things didn't work out that way. I'm just kind of looking over my shoulder to kind of see what's in there. I was thinking about the patch a lot, but I didn't actually patch it until recently, so it's still a little new in my head. I used a lot of instro devices, so the R-bar and the loopa are kind of the main looping sections that I did for kind of that ambient introduction, with the panharmonium over kind of adding some texture to that. That was also being run through the cicada through a filter, which didn't quite stick out as much as it did as I wanted it to tonight, but that was an interesting kind of fuzzy element to the ambient section. And then I had the Strega kind of doubling some of those notes, and that kind of created a lot of texture. And that synth definitely was used in all three sections. I was using the Arturia KeyStep Pro to control that, so that was the only thing I was playing there. Then, of course, the Moog Grandmother was kind of adding some textures to that. And then there was the Buchla section. So the Buchla actually started during the ambient stuff. I was using something called missed opportunities to kind of do its gate randomization, basically, and it was triggering a lot of the percussion, as well as certain notes on the Buchla during the ambient section. So it was kind of just triggering an occasional note every once in a while, and then from there I kind of morphed the Buchla sound into a little more typical Buchla sound, added in the so that was obviously that's the easel command, and I have 3 expansion cards connected to it right now. The toolbox, the VCS3 oscillator, and the 291 filter from Tokyo Tape Music Center. And then I added the tip top 281 quad function generator and the 258 oscillator. Lots of cross modulation. And then for the drums were actually just a white noise through a high pass filter, being randomly triggered then through the natural gate. And what else did I use? The kick itself was a TSL oscillator, just being FM modded, and then occasionally the BIA would come in, again through that random gate, and so it didn't always play, and then it was being modulated by the verbose multi-tap processor, delay processor, whatever it's called. And then there was another voice that I was playing a lot in the modular case, which is the harmony through the psych, through his 10 IO47 filter, and then everything was kind of running through Chronoblob and the Desmodus for reverb. So I think that's everything I ended up actually using. Oh, no, sorry, there was a distortion pedal, the RML FX, or Retromechanical Labs double distortion filter. So there's a fuzz portion and a distortion filter in like a dual pedal, which adds it gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of create grungy, filtery sounds on a pretty big level. So that was my setup tonight.
Fantastic.
I know that's a lot of detail. Sorry about that.
Very cool.
No, we're all here for the details.
Okay. Cool.
It's kind of like an Ogre song, "Devil in My Details." Maybe that's one of his albums.
Yeah.
I can nerd out on details, so you're good.
All right. I just kind of hate listing modules too much. So what kind of excites me more is like how they get used, I guess. So.
Well,
Absolutely.
and Anton, I think that's part of the process for all of us is what the modules you're using and how you interact them together, because we all have a different process.
For sure. For sure.
And what we do at Piqued is to focus on your process, and how you're using those pieces of equipment. I've got similar pieces, in my home studio between the both of you, a little bit from both, and I use them completely differently. And I'm always excited, and I think everyone in the audience is always excited to hear about how you're using those pieces in your sets to make those wonderful sounds. We're all going to use it in different ways. Some will be a little bit more similar, but when it gets down to modulars, it gets very different.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, the one module that's been really exciting me that I mentioned is this missed opportunities. I've been doing a few sets with Travarsi, and I've been able to get these stabs out of it, but also like intertwining melodic elements from it. It's a really interesting module if you guys haven't seen it much.
I'm not that familiar with it, so I'm really happy to hear about it.
Yeah, so the thing that to me, so it's 4 gate probability, like Bernoulli gates, that share a common distribution setting. So you can kind of turn them all up or down at the same time. And then where it starts to get interesting is that there's a cascading effect from each Bernoulli gate. And then you can choose if that cascading effect, if it happens when the gate was false or positive, is whichever one will go through. So if you use it in the false gate, then something doesn't play, something else has an opportunity to play. And then if you sort of have everything match when it hits, then you can sort of get like a rhythmic accents. So those are the 2 ways I kind of use it, and I find that to be really useful for kind of manipulating rhythm in particular.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, like I clearly am not using modular, but what I did spend a little bit of time in the modular world, and I would think the same philosophy applies to whether you're doing that or not. But kind of the fun part about instruments like these is learning those technical details and deciding how you want to apply it, especially if you haven't heard someone else try it yet and you just kind of want to see if you can bring it into creation.
Yeah, for sure. And I know a lot of like those Electron boxes have a lot of probability built into them. So even though I'm talking about a specific module, probability is really interesting in ways to manipulate electronic music. So always worth looking into.
Yes. And one of the questions we had from the audience tonight from the Electronic Sounds for Dev. What is that flutter sound in the beginning of your set?
So that's coming obviously from the Polybrute. It's using all 3 of the Polybrute's LFOs to kind of just change the master cutoff. And there's 2 filters on the Polybrute. One's straight low pass filter. The other can be kind of changed into a band pass filter, and they each have their own cutoff knobs. But the master cutoff, things get really interesting when you start using the master cutoff because that changes both of them at the same time. And you get into interesting territory when you start, modulating the master cutoff. But there's a specific LFO on this thing that, like, I don't know what the official name is for it, but it's like just a weird LFO where the shape is like this or like this. And I'm not like, and you can change the symmetry of it. So you can change the symmetry, you can change the speed, you can change the shape. All of these LFOs can, interact with each other. So what I'm doing on that one kind of like fluttering patch is I'm setting this kind of like strange shape to the master cutoff and then modulating the symmetry of that shape and the speed of that LFO. And kind of just basically setting it to a point where that flutter never really happens the same way twice, but it kind of like ramps up the same way and then changes. And sometimes it's a little bit more fluttery than other times, but I really wanted it to be the kind of patch where, like, if I play a chord on the keys, it's never going to sound 100% the same every single time, and it'll kind of go on a journey on its own after, pressing down one or multiple keys. I hope that answers their question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Dev. I really appreciate that. And actually, we've got another question that is very similar that to your answer from our friend MIDI Scripts, who's been on the show before. Great guy out here in the Bay Area. And this is
cool.
actually a question for both of you. He asks, could you please tell us more about ambient music scene from your perspective? And what great spaces, shows, streams for ambient in the Bay Area and online? Now, and I'll say, I would like to say maybe let's expand that a little bit beyond the Bay Area question, seeing as if you're in the Bay Area, but Anton, you are in LA. So let's keep that into perspective a little bit. So Anton, how would you respond?
Well, it's sort of, I mean, that's a really hard question to answer. This past weekend, I happened to see Steve Roach in concert, and he's kind of one of those ambient people a few people have heard of, and we saw him at a university in a concert space, and there was something really beautiful about seeing him and hearing him live. As he was really playing through his board, and so a space like what he has really requires space to hear the room, to tune the room, and I think maybe more than good places to make ambient music or to hear ambient music is to make sure you take the time to understand that when you're playing ambient music, you are playing that space. So as he was kind of talking, he mentioned that he will spend an entire day ahead of a set in the room where he's going to play, listening to the room, listening to how his music responds, so that when he's there, he can sort of get a feeling for what the room feels like and sounds like. Conversely, he also played at a house party that a friend of mine was at about 20 years ago when he was playing a lot of didgeridoo. And my friend was laying on the floor with his eyes closed, really into the ambient scene. He said the room suddenly felt like he was just going on this journey, and there was a didgeridoo like 2 inches from his face. So, you're never, I would say ambient music can live anywhere, anywhere that you want to enjoy it is good. Also check out Sign Mountain's like monthly skies, the October skies, November skies. I think there's one coming up. He always curates some online amazing ambient performances. So definitely worth checking that out too.
Oh yeah, David Soda's great. He's fantastic. I'm hoping to have him on very soon.
Yeah,
by the way.
Definitely.
So. And Deb, same question. Tell us about ambient music from your perspective.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I honestly just agree. The notion of like ambient music happening in a live space, I guess I'm kind of two ways about it. In one way, absolutely, yes, you are playing the space. But it also requires like a kind of flexibility to change how your music might have sounded in your headphones or in your speakers and stuff like that. I think when you're working with a lot of cavernous sounds like big reverbs, big delays, it's for me it's something that I try to keep in mind if I'm going to a space. But I also play a lot of spaces, like a lot of diverse spaces. I've played a warehouse in San Jose. I've played a coffee shop out here in the Sunset District. I've played a bookstore. I've played like a nightclub, and they all had a very different kind of feel, even if I was like playing ostensibly the same kind of music. And one of the things I like to do is kind of imagine a brand new set for every show and I try to make it something that I think will complement the space. If I have access to the space, I'll check it out beforehand and, just kind of, I don't know, see what the vibe is there. But yeah, I think at least in the Bay Area, it's hard to speak on behalf of a community of musicians, but from my experience, the Bay Area is filled with a lot of different kinds of musicians, and ambient music and musicians are like one tip of a massive multi-pronged iceberg, and they show up in many, many different kinds of ways. And it's hard to put a fine point on it, but there are lots of different kinds of musicians here in the Bay Area, and most, if not all of them, are open to the conventions of ambient music and forming it to their own styles and taking it and reinterpreting it, which is essentially what I like to try and do with the style of music.
Thank you. That's an excellent perspective that really well focuses on the Bay Area and how different spaces can affect how you respond to your performance.
Mm-hmm. It's something you feel out, like I guess one of my favorite sets that I got to play was in a coffee shop where people were walking in and out, and the literal ambience of the cafe itself kind of felt like part of the performance, where you have the sounds of like clinking glasses and people calling orders for coffee and stuff, or people having kind of like a low hum of chatter, but also I had some monitors and speakers that were kind of pushing out this sound that I was trying to add to the space and not be the main focus, but just kind of part of the scene.
That makes sense. Very good.
Playing in coffee shops is awesome.
Yeah.
I love having a mic open to like feed into some of it.
Mm-hmm,
also.
mm-hmm.
Feeding it into like a granular synth or something like that really gets interesting. Yeah.
When you start to work with the texture of the room, which is always a fun prospect.
Totally.
Got a great question/comment from Enthusiastic Electrons. Are you performing ambient, or is the ambiance performing you?
It sounds like one of those in Russia.
Well, you forgot Soviet in there.
Right.
It's Soviet Russia, ambient play you.
And hello, Enthusiastic Electrons.
Maybe a little bit of both, right?
Totally.
Well, maybe maybe someone's future set can have a little Yakov Smirnoff in it.
Oh boy,
that could be fun. I've been playing around with the samples I can throw into Morphogene. There might be some things coming up soon now with that comment.
When I was into modular, Morphogene was my favorite module, so I loved that thing to death.
It's a really cool module. I really want to get to know or try it more. It just hasn't been in my rig enough yet.
It's been pretty neat. I've only had it, I'd say less than a year. Yeah, less than a year. I acquired it last year, and it's slowly been growing on me. Really, within the past I'd say maybe since December, I really started to deep dive into what I can really control with it, and I've found that I do controlling, and I've found like performing live and also doing some pre-recorded sets, I've been able to control it more and more the deeper I get into it. It's been pretty fun, and that's going between making pre-recorded samples on the SD card, but then also having like a microphone plugged into it to do on the spot samples if you're going to be in a if you're performing in a club or any event space.
It's also cool that both Make Noise and just sort of the community at large share reels for it, and I think that's a really great aspect of a module like Morphagene.
Agreed. Goes along with the that open source idea.
Yeah, exactly.
We can all share. It's fantastic. Let's get into some more questions. So let's get on to something a little bit broader. I'd like to know a little bit about your musical journey. I'd like to know, tell us about how you got into electronic music, and let's start off with Anton.
Sure. Wow. I guess I've always been really fascinated with the combination of acoustic and electronic instruments. So when I got my very first synthesizer back in the early 90s, I actually kind of loved and hated it because it was just I had this freedom to kind of do whatever I wanted, but it was a really limited synth in certain ways, and I was just using the built-in sequencer, and I don't know, just kind of experimented a lot with how to go about making music on it. At the time, I was really into sort of the local goth and industrial scene in Boulder, and so I was kind of inspired by that music, but I found I never really made it very well. So in college, I had a lot of access to a lot of interesting electronic synths and ideas about how electronic music can work and play, and I knew that I wanted to get into film scoring, which is kind of what I've been doing for the past almost 20 years, and definitely having hybrid setups was always important. Adding real players to electronics was always important, and I don't know. At some point, I just got good at MIDI and electronics. Always had my eye on modular synths, and I would say in the past 3 to 4 years, I've really gone from using a lot of sample-based electronic music to pure analog synthesis, which and then merging that with acoustic instrument. And I find that is where there's a really happy medium for me at the moment. So that's I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but that's kind of the slow journey. So
no, that's fine. You answer it how it seems for you.
Sure.
There's no right answer.
Sure.
Deb, tell us about how you got into playing electronic music.
Yeah. I feel like Anton and I have a kinship in terms of an interest in the way acoustic instruments interact with electronic instruments. That's always been a really big fascination of mine. It's funny because I was honestly thinking about this question today, and I think my interest in electronic music probably started when I was very, very young, and is most likely tied to my adoration for video game soundtracks. mostly because back in the Nintendo 64 PS1 days, you weren't getting real instruments on those soundtracks, or I mean, if you were, it must have been, rare. But those synthetic sounds that I was hearing in like adventure games, RPG games, and stuff like that, those were always really interesting to me, and um, they always kind of caught my attention, and I always felt like I was like, there were times when I would play a video game just to listen to the music that was in it, and that kind of stayed with me. And I think I got more into the idea of making electronic music um, almost at the exact same time that I got interested in making music in general. I started out like being really interested in playing guitar and joining like rock and metal bands. And I listened to a ton of industrial music at the time. And, it's one of those, like when a young person just finds a kind of music that switches the light on, and then suddenly they just want to consume as much of it as they can find and like really just explore. And, you know, rock bands that had an electronic element to them were always really interesting to me. Not all of them aged great, but I think at the same time I'd be remiss if I didn't like honor what they like the little fire that they lit for me. Where I was like, oh, like I learned guitar, I taught myself drums and bass, and it kind of felt like synthesizers and samplers and electronic equipment was like the top of the hill, where I was like, oh, like that sounds like something that, you know, like when I see someone playing a guitar, I can almost tell that they're playing guitar, but there's like almost like a mystery element to the electronic music element part of the music, where I was like, what is that? It's intangible. It could be almost anything I could imagine. And that was where I was like, I think I want to see what that feels like and
Yeah.
see where it takes me. My very first band in high school was this terrible industrial band that I went out and I got my very first synth, which was an Alesis Micron, and I had no idea what I was doing on it. I just knew that it made really cool sounds, and I just wanted to like make some wicked riffs on it. And
It's
it ended up having some really beautiful patches on it, where it was full of like strange textures that I did not expect to get into. And eventually I would start listening to even more kinds of music, and it would expand a lot of the things that I would consider music, or that I would listen to. And I kind of just felt like it was a way that I wanted to express myself.
That's awesome. You have any recordings from those times?
I think I might be able to dig some up. I can't say they're my favorite recordings, but they're definitely there's a lot of heart in them.
Cool.
The answer is no. I can't find them.
There's definitely a couple of bands I was in. I was in 20 years ago, not a little bit more than 20 years ago, that I can happily say, yeah, nothing exists.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny how that era of electronic music really sounds like that era of electronic music. And I think that's actually one of the things I was complaining about with my very first synth is it sounded too much like that synth, and it was forever stuck, you know, 2 years before it was released, since that was when they started designing it, so um, it already sounded dated by the time I got it.
We've got a
So-
question. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got a question from Patrick O'Brien for Anton. What's your favorite way to make generative patches?
I'm a huge fan of the Crow patch, which is in and of itself about as generative as you can get. So anything that starts with that is going to be good for me. I think anything that you can get that randomizes per step is going to be really useful, and then the more things that you can use to modulate, the better. So one of the reasons that Krell patch to me is kind of fascinating is that every step that you have, everything randomizes, and so it creates a living, breathing thing. I think that thing that I hated about my first Korg that I had in the 90s was that the sound just constantly sounded the same, and getting anything to modulate was like pulling teeth. And so my old composition professor used to describe it as the accordion effect of of those old synths. So the actual process for creating generative music doesn't matter to me as much as the removing anything static. If you have anything static, then the music becomes less interesting. So as many LFOs as you can get, as many envelope generators as you can get that modulate other envelope generators. And, you know, I did a Krell patch with like 4 modules the other day, and I had almost as many cables used as my entire setup tonight. So, generative music just requires letting the instruments do what they were designed to do. So, and Patrick knows that. He's just he knows that.
I'm sure he does.
I mean, how many times have you watched Patrick perform and just been like, yes, I want to do what he's doing? And the thing that's always so interesting is the music is always evolving and always changing. He's always tweaking it. So, generative music is no different. So, there's another guy, J. Daniel Kramer. I think he goes by Queer is his band name. He does a lot of generative stuff. He uses the Krell patch as a basis for a lot of what he does, but then he uses theremin controllers to kind of add and subtract. So you can use the theremin controllers to kind of exaggerate how much or how little something else is being taken care of. And to go back to
super interesting.
Yeah, he has a whole YouTube series. It's very technical and very long, but definitely if you have time and you're interested in generative patching, it's probably one of the better descriptions about how to take a Krell patch from purely generative to performance generative, which is kind of in between the two. So worth looking it up.
Thank you. That's great. Now let's go over to Dev. Dev, I'm curious about some recent releases. Could you tell us about what you've been putting out into the world on Bandcamp?
Yeah. So I haven't done an official album release, like a traditional album release, in quite some time. I think maybe the latest might have been like one EP that I very intentionally recorded at like the beginning of the pandemic. But since then, I've really just been releasing live recordings and just kind of sharing them out for free and kind of just on a whim sometimes. Like usually if I'm really excited about a set, I'll consider like, oh, like beforehand, like, is this something I want to share? Is this something I want to record? Um, and yeah, I mean, I wish I had a more consistent feeling about it and a more like solid answer, but basically the main point is uh I've kind of only been really interested in sharing live music lately. It's a mix of, if I'm gonna if I'm gonna have like a multi-track recording and really have like a full album, that's something that I know I will like throw myself into, and it'll take a while. But there's something kind of fun and shoot from the hip and like a little bit risk oriented when you start to consider your live performances as your material that you put out to the world. um, those those performances and playing live have kind of just been what's fulfilling me. And I think maybe eventually I would like to, like, I know I told a friend this year I will make like a dedicated album release. Like this year I'll do it. And even as I was saying it, I was like, I don't know if I'm lying to my friend right now. But like I don't mean to be. I don't want to be, but I also, I'm yeah, I just kind of like go with the flow, and this has been the flow, you know?
Yeah, I understand that. If you don't have the right concept, it's not doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a
And
multi-track album.
I think concept is also really important for it too. Like I like having a concept when I like do an album. I like having kind of a set of parameters and challenges to give myself. And it's weird how that's kind of morphed into just doing that for live shows, where like I will be like, all right, like here's the concept in my head that I'll do for this live set, and if it works it works, if it doesn't, it's a live set. It's whatever, it's no big deal. I used to have that sense for like creating full albums and stuff like that, and not saying that I won't anymore, but yeah, maybe later this year I'll feel that spark of like, okay, let's actually open up the DAW and start multi-tracking this, as opposed to just recording the entire thing as one long performance and being like, well, there it is.
Very good. And Anton,
Hmm.
tell us about your music on Bandcamp. Do you have any? Uh, I've noticed, and as you mentioned, you have been doing musical scores, and as on your Bandcamp, you've got mostly musical scores for I think video game soundtracks.
Hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that and any upcoming releases?
Sure. Yeah. So I have. Well, I'll start by saying I have an imminently releasing album um, that uh, is coming up soon. I have a group called Nereus, which is music for viola and modular synth. Um, it it is last summer. Um, I did a similar kind of live performance, and it just kind of inspired my partner and I to just try recording together. And in a week, we recorded about 52 minutes of music. So we're um, very close to having it done. Um, so yeah, that's something I'm really excited about, and it is kind of live music in that same sense that Dev was just mentioning, um, but also it's um, exciting, and it includes the very first thing that we ever played together. Literally, we hit record and we are like, "Let's go!" and it's what we did. Um, and in terms of the stuff that's online, I have a few. I've been doing video games for the past 11 or 12 years, mostly small video games. Um, but I did do this game called Receiver in 2012, and that was the first time I ever tried doing a purely electronic soundtrack, in terms of I was going for an electronic sound, and it was pretty popular, relatively speaking. And so then we ended up making a sequel game where I had the opportunity to kind of go in and really make a full electronic score for Riehl. And I kind of targeted what I had been doing in the box with Synth Reproductions. I was kind of slowly getting into modular around that time. So I had the opportunity to kind of mix this new passion of mine with the hardware synths and the game that I was working on. And then I had some really interesting opportunities to work with a singer. So she's Mongolian. Her name's Uyanga Bold. And she really does a lot of these, I don't know, epic, soundtracks. I know she works with like Hans Zimmer and things like that a lot. But she came in and she added, I was looking for Qawwali style singing, which, if you guys know Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, he was a singer that collaborated with Peter Gabriel a lot, and he always added something really amazing, and I felt like she really nailed that extra something, and we did a cassette release of that and also a follow-up album. So there's 2 Receiver 2 soundtracks that are kind of the 2 main things on there. And yeah, there's still some cassettes left of the second one. The first one actually sold out, which blew my mind. So yeah, cassette releases are kind of cool. I don't know. You just don't always expect them to sell out. So, and there's a few other soundtracks that are up there. There's another one for this game I did called Overgrowth, where it's almost no electronics. It's all I play a lot of ethnic flutes. I saw CK ask for some of my flutes, but I didn't pull them out today. But yeah, even the video game music is fascinating. I've done many of these like small ones. I've also done like a Star Wars video game where I got to go and record the 90-piece orchestra, and it was really fascinating being able to write music for video games, big or small. You're always writing for this medium where music is hugely impactful on the secondary, like you're not the primary output of content, you're the secondary output of content. You're working with something else. It's film scoring, video games, but video games really offer a lot of freedom for music. So yeah, definitely, if video game music is up your alley, check it out.
I'm gonna have to now, man.
Yeah,
definitely.
Wow.
I will send you some. Just let's chat afterwards.
Please.
Thank you.
For sure.
That was really fun.
Cool.
As Lamel had asked, and Anton, you have already responded, which was, do either of you have collaborative work in the future in the path? And I'd like to bring that question over to Dev. Dev, do you have any collaborations that might be coming up at all?
Yeah, I guess I can give a plug for something I'm pretty stoked about. Last November, I guess it was last October, a couple friends of mine who are pretty big in the writing community in the Bay Area, they approached me about a reading series, a really unique reading series that they wanted to do, wherein they take submissions of sci-fi short stories and they sort through the submissions and they choose 5 to 6 readers, and they approached me in a way of being like, would you be interested in live scoring the stories as they read them? And it was like one of the easiest yeses I think I've ever given. But so the first event of this was at a place called Deco Dance Bar here in San Francisco, and it went marvelously well. Like, I wasn't expecting it to not go well, but like, the positive response was really it was heartwarming. Like, not like surprising, like I'm surprised this did well, but like more so I was like, wow, people really enjoyed this, and it was a lot of fun, and it was this really intriguing way of performing that I'd never really done before, where I'm working off of somebody who's reading a story, and I had access to that story beforehand, and they even gave me recordings of them reading it. So I had an idea of what was going to happen, and I had a sense of like, here are all the, like, I guess, cues for the changes in the story. But I also kind of made it a goal to not like super tightly score it. Like, I wanted it to have like a bit of improvisational element to it. So I really just kind of like thought about, okay, let's memorize points in the story where I'm going to slowly change the atmosphere a little bit, or quickly change it in some cases. But then I also noticed that like the way that the readers would read their stories in front of an audience in a crowd was really different than how they would like send it to me, like as a recording of them just in their living room, kind of just reading the story. Some of them had a little bit more of a performative element. Some of them were just, faster or slower than in their recording. So it had this element of risk and collaboration. And I talked with the people who organized the event, and we've become friends and stuff. And they want to do it like 4 or 5 times a year. And so we're already, actually just today, they closed submissions for new stories, and we have another show that's going to be March 16th, and it's going to be at Deco Dance again.
Fantastic. Deco Dance, March 16th, San Francisco.
Sounds cool.
That's the plan.
It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to reading the new stories and seeing what I can do. I use an entire analog setup for the whole thing, which maybe is making it really hard for myself. But very similar to the setup that I used tonight is what I used for this last show. So the event is called Club Chicxulub, and focuses on sci-fi stories, particularly apocalyptic ones. So it's named after the asteroid crater that destroyed the dinosaurs. So very apocalyptic science fiction on brand kind of stuff. A lot of fun to score too. A lot of fun.
Cool.
That's so exciting. I love the concept of it. I'm really excited that it's going to be in San Francisco. And this actually relates to another question we have from our friend MIDI Scripts, who says, curious about ambient live performances in coffee shops and other places. Would be happy to attend. Not sure I know where to find announcements. Anybody knows a good source to follow? So that's one place. Are there any other places, Deb, that you could think of that you could point MIDI Scripts to?
Because I mean, I usually learn about these things through other musicians on Instagram, and as much as I don't like being like chained to that platform, it is a pretty amazing source of just what people are doing in the area. And I've kind of found myself just following a lot of other artists, and usually incidentally finding, wherever they're performing. I can say that, like, a couple spots out here in the Sunset District gave me really warm welcomes when I wanted to play ambient sets there. There's a Ocean Beach Cafe, which is a relatively new spot. I played a set there with some friends of mine, a duo called Chromacy from out here in my neighborhood. and they have pretty similar music to mine, with a little bit more of like a down tempo vibe to it. And I played with them at Ocean Beach Cafe, and that is a wonderful coffee shop, and two, the owner is very, very open to different kinds of performances, and it really takes just a hello, a kind hello, and introducing yourself or seeing, what they're open to. The other spot I played many times was the Honey Hive Gallery, and they've been very, very small establishment, but uh, a startling amount of diverse performances can happen there. I've been to punk shows there. I've played an ambient show there. My band has played a post rock show there, so it's quite a wide variety of things. I wish I had a better answer for a good source to follow, other than following artists and seeing where they're playing.
It's I think that's an okay thing to say, Dev. And actually, I've got a little bit of a lead for MIDI scripts and anyone else who's interested. Is Fault Radio is going to be doing
Mm,
a live show, I think this Saturday at the Phoenix Hotel in San Francisco, which is it's basically supposed to be a a, a, a collaboration with local artists with Fault Radio to get more of the local scene going again
mm,
in San Francisco. And
very
that's
good
happening.
lead.
Yeah. This that's gonna be this Saturday. What is that? The 18th, I believe. This weekend.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that could be fun. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it, but I'm pretty sure there'll be a few people that I know who are probably going to be attending that.
Mhm. It also just occurred to me, like, there's groups like Gray Area and stuff here that put on
Oh
a lot of
yes.
amazing shows, and sometimes multimedia performances, and very interesting kinds of just organized art spaces. Following groups like that have always kind of been really interesting to me, or Envelop Sound, which isn't necessarily shows, but very interesting. I think it's basically surround audio, kind of like just listening events. A friend of mine and I listened to a Radiohead album that they played in this really amazing sort of multi-tiered, coming at you from every single direction, feeling like you're in Tom York's piano kind of way. Stuff like that. So it's not always shows with live performers, but also just very interesting art spaces. I think you'll always have luck when you start following art spaces.
Yeah.
So that's a great point, Dev. Right there is Gray Area Grand Theater on Mission Street in San Francisco, which is a fantastic theater. And you're right, they do have um, a great audio setup, surround, and fantastic for anyone who is performing quadraphonics, such as our friend
Mm,
Frank Martin, who performed a quadraphonic set back in September, where myself included and a group of us all played together different sets right after the others. There was 6 audio artists, and we had 2 visual artists going on at Gray Area Grand Theater back in September for the Eclectic Trips Festival,
mhm.
and it was a really fun time. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had playing live. You know, playing at the Gray Area Grand Theater was a tremendous experience for me, knowing that I got to see Morton Subotnick play there, and I got to see Cyrano play there, and then over a year later, I got to perform in the same space.
Very cool.
It was just like a phenomenal thing to me, and it's a fantastic space. What they're doing, that crew right there, what they're doing, great great things for audio, for visual. They're still doing stuff. They've always got something amazing going on. Malarkey is always posting about on the Left Coast Lights Slack channel what's going on over there, what he has tickets for, and saying, hey, who's going to this? Because they've always got some kind of cool 3D interactive, piece you can go and experience.
Mm.
And my friends and I were also looking forward to possibly doing another show there later this year. Hopefully, we can announce something later on with something more with a date. But to be stay tuned, of course. But yeah, great point on the Gray Area. Fantastic place. Can't boast about it enough. It's got, as you can tell, it's got a place in my heart. It's pretty special to me.
But you like it.
And okay, we've got some other questions here. Let's backtrack for a sec. Ooh, Evan Massey asks, Dev, what's your favorite guitar pedal?
That's a great question, Evan. Evan's my bandmate. Thanks for signing on, homie. But for everybody else, favorite guitar pedal. So okay. So my favorite guitar pedal is this pedal made by Chase Bliss. It's called the Chase Bliss Mood, and it's easily my favorite guitar pedal. I didn't think it was my favorite guitar pedal for a while. It was just kind of like my fun pedal, but I used to think the Empress Zoya was my favorite pedal for a long time, just because of basically all the crazy shit it can do. But what I ended up finding, or just kind of realizing over time, was the Zoya is an excellent pedal, and I very much do enjoy it. But I was using it as kind of like a master effect, and I wasn't really interacting with it a whole lot. It was more of like a set and forget kind of effect. Whereas I repeatedly found myself turning to the Chase Bliss Mood for just really amazing texture generation that I wasn't entirely in control of, but more of like just kind of like a fun surprise mystery box kind of way. Like, what if I feed it this audio, and what's going to happen when I when I feed it this audio? For those who don't know what the Mood does, it's kind of an always on micro looper, and it's always recording until you hit one of the pedals, and then it's basically a granular pedal, honestly, where you get these like really nice just quick snapshots of whatever you were just last playing, and there's no way to 100% guarantee what it's going to grab. So it's not like a traditional loop pedal where you like punch in, punch out, and there's your loop. It's more like, what have I been playing something interesting? Let me just click the Mood on and see what it grabs. And you can mess with the clock on it so that you have this tiny buffer, and you get like, of course, like basically like bird sounds and stuff. But you can also really crank it down, and you get these very, very long, very just dense, like just, I don't even know how to describe it, just like so lush and digitized and just destroyed samples in a really glorious and beautiful way. And I found myself just picking it up a lot and just experimenting with it. Hope that answers your question, Evan.
Can you teach me how to use mine? Because I have one, and I really like it, but I haven't gotten over that hump of really knowing how to incorporate it into my system. So
I think the reverb on it is kind of secret weapon for that pedal. In addition to just the micro looping, that's another thing, is it's a delay and reverb pedal too, along with all the other kind of weird granular stuff.
right.
And I think feeding the micro loops into the reverb and then back and forth is how you can kind of start to get a lot of texture generation. And that's a lot of fun.
Cool.
I'd say let go of what you can't control about it, I guess. Yeah, it's its own thing.
One of the artists that I know personally that uses Chase Bliss pedals is Need for Storms, and that's Dorian, and he's the main guy I know who really showed me what the Chase Bliss pedals can do, and everything he does with it. And typically I've seen him perform using 2 or 3 different Chase Bliss pedals along with an Octatrack and a couple of other modules in Eurorack. But that's his basic setup over the past couple of years ago. We hadn't had a chance to perform in a little while together, but when we did, that was his main setup. He always had some Chase Bliss in there, and what he was able to do with them was very impressive. And for me, that's my example of how expressive those pedals really can be.
They really are. They've got a ton happening under the hood, and they're also just like really well built, and they're a lot of they just feel good to interact with. They've these big old chunky knobs on them, and like it just feels good to play with that pedal. It's like it's the only kind of guitar pedal where I'm like, I'm not gonna put this on my pedal board. I mean, if Evan's listening, he knows that I have 2 Chase Bliss pedals on my board, but I'm almost always just reaching back down to just play with them, and just just for the sheer joy of just seeing what happens when I turn one or the other knob.
Very cool. So we've got a little over past 9 p.m. here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, guys. I know that I don't know what you're doing tomorrow, but I hope it's not too early in the morning. But I want to thank you both for coming on the show tonight and doing these wonderful ambient performances. And Anton, yours went a little granular, a little industrial with it. I really enjoyed it. I noticed you're wearing a 9 Inch Nails with Teeth tour shirt. That was fun.
I am.
And yeah, and Dad, you've got like the Outer Sunset T-shirt, which is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Just
nice. Beautiful. Good stuff, guys. Before we say goodnight, are there any announcements you guys have for us tonight that we didn't get to?
I should probably mention that I've been working with Travarsi and CK Sample and the members of the Transduction Signal Collective. We have some stuff coming out, and we played last week. There's maybe another performance next week here in LA, and I think there's maybe a new sampler from us coming up in the next couple months. So keep an eye out for Transduction Signal Collective. And thanks for having us. Sorry, what was that?
Oh no, my mistake. Oh. I thought you were done. I slipped over you, and I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
and thanks for having us.
For mine, it's just Club Chicxulub, March 16th. I can share a link around.
Please do. We're happy to share it. Hit me up on Instagram, or email me, please, Dev. And Anton, please email me anything you guys want to promote. I'm happy to send that out to everybody who's following our Instagram accounts and YouTube and Twitch accounts. And I'm always happy to promote anything that's happening within the local scenes. It's definitely the passion that Rich and I have for Piqued, is see what's going on in the local scenes, promote it, and hopefully encourage the curiosity that we all have.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this was fun. Great set, Dev.
Thank you. Great set, Anton. Thanks. I'm glad we got to do this. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for coming on, guys. It's been such a pleasure for me to have you both on. It's such a treat. It really is. It was both wonderful ambient sets overall, and me and the audience, we were relaxing. We were able to enjoy what was going on. I really need, to quote again, I really felt the need for storms. to just get some rain going on over here. Not because
Love that.
one, because it's February in San Francisco. I expect rain. I like the rain, but also it would go along. Some nice wet weather would go great with the music you guys were playing tonight. I think it would be really appropriate if Mother Nature was playing along. But whatever. Okay, fine, Mother Nature, you do your thing. Okay, and but that's okay. It's all right. But anyway, overall, guys, again, thanks again for performing tonight. Thanks again, Jens, for showing up and listening on tonight. I had just noticed that Piqued now has 231 subscribers, which I didn't realize, which is a great feat for us. We've been doing the show for almost 3 years, guys, and we've been growing very slowly. Overall, I don't think we've been really pushing it that much, but it's nice to see that it is getting out there a little bit more. I've heard from a few of our friends that Piqued is one of the secrets kept in the Bay Area. That hopefully we can branch out a little bit more and get some more people getting on in here, because we're always trying to branch out and find more unique musicians out there, which you are, and I'm happy to have you part of what we do. Thank you so much again. And before we go off, I wanted to let you all know that the music that you heard before the show and you'll hear at the end of the show is provided by our friend Shabalba, which is she's a wonderful musician. She doesn't perform a lot, but we're always happy to hear her music, and we're always happy to hear when she makes new music, which is always a cool thing. So always listen for Shabalba. She's always making some unique music on usually an OPZ or two. So
Very cool.
we're getting late. I'm babbling on too much, guys. Thank you so much again at Piqued. Stay home, stay safe. Good night.